What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with another video. Now it's time for the WWE Stipulation Heavy pay-per-view show Extreme Rules, but with an eye for an eye match and a Wyatt swamp fight, the show very could well live up to its nickname, the Horror Show at Extreme Rules. But how was the show? Was it more The Shining and less of Troll 2? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia recaps this year's Extreme Rules and looks at the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. No, wait. Let's scratch that. The downright horrifying. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos. Now, just like with all pay-per-views, we do recap the matches. So let's start off with the pre-show, as we got Kevin Owens versus Buddy Murphy. The announcers play up how a win by Kevin Owens could keep Buddy Murphy from interfering in tonight's eye for an eye match. And Murphy comes close, but a stunner from KO ends this one. Kevin Owens comes out the winner. But that was the pre-show. Now let's move on to the main show, where the night opened up with a tables match for the Smackdown Tag Team Championship, as the champions The New Day take on Shinsuke Nakamura and CESARO. Now, while Corey Graves thinks the table stipulation favors CESARO and Nakamura, the New Day are out for revenge, showing a brutal side unlike their power of positivity. The New Day punish the challengers, telling them they brought this violence on themselves and that Kofi's gonna end the match by putting CESARO through 2 tables, courtesy of a Hurricane Rana. However, a save by Shinsuke Nakamura stops the Dreadlock Dynamo and CESARO powerbombs Kofi through not 1, but 2 tables on the outside for the win. It's definitely been a while since we've seen some double table finishes, but whilst we were shocked with that, we were even more shocked to see that Shinsuke Nakamura and CESARO are the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. They then cut to backstage where Asuka, Kairi Sane and Alexa Bliss encourage NIKKI Cross about her upcoming title match. And that match is next as SmackDown Champion Bayley, who's with Sasha Banks, takes on NIKKI Cross, who's with Alexa Bliss. NIKKI uses her strength and unorthodox style to pummel the champion, but she repeatedly finds herself unable to put Bayley away. However, Cross keeps fighting, inflicting more damage until Sasha Banks hands Bayley her boss ring, and Bayley uses it as a foreign object, punching Cross in the gut and hitting a faceplant for the win. It was kind of odd seeing the foreign object being used in the gut, as normally a la Regal back in the day used it to punch the living daylights out of his opponent. But regardless, Bayley retains the SmackDown Women's Championship. We then get a special edition of the Firefly Funhouse, with Bray Wyatt unleashing some of the most horrifying footage known to man, the recent SmackDown karaoke segment. Whew, boy, we're still having nightmares on that one. Next up is the United States Championship match as champion Apollo Crews takes on MVP. Now, the Raw crew announced there will be no match because Apollo couldn't pass the pre-match physical due to the previous injury he suffered at the hands of Bobby Lashley. As a result of the forfeit, MVP proclaims himself the champion as Lashley puts the new United States Championship around his waist. Is MVP the new champion or the self-proclaimed champion? We'll have to see and wait for Raw tomorrow night. A hype video then airs for the Eye for an Eye match, and the WWE still does outstanding work with its hype videos. That Eye for an Eye match though is next, as Seth Rollins takes on Rey Mysterio. Now, both men know the only way to win is to take out the other man's eye. We thought we'd never hear that in wrestling, but both superstars try various implements such as a kendo stick, steel bar and even a pen, but they're unable to get the job done. Rey hits a curb stomp on Rollins and goes to remove his eye by using the steel steps, but Seth low blows him. Curb stomp on Rey, and Seth uses the steps to take Rey's eye out, winning the match. Seth Rollins managed to take Rey Mysterio's eye out, but after the match, Seth Rollins is seen vomiting at ringside while officials and medics check on Rey. Oh boy, we'll save our opinion for the end of the video. There's a hype video for Bray Wyatt versus Braun Strowman, but then that leads on to the Raw Women's Championship match as champion Asuka, who's with Kairi Sane, takes on Sasha Banks, who's with Bayley. Banks shows her viciousness, going after Asuka with one thing in mind, becoming Raw Women's Champion once again. Banks seems to have everything going her way until she hurts her knee, with the referee asking if she wants to continue. Asuka gets the Asuka lock in until Bayley interferes. Asuka then goes for the green mist, but blinds the referee by accident. Bayley clobbers Asuka with the title belt, then puts on the referee shirt, making the 3 count for Banks. Now, this should be a disqualification, but both Bayley and Sasha Banks think they've won it. We'll have to see what happens on Raw. Probably a rematch is gonna happen. Now it's time for another hype video, this time for Drew McIntyre versus Dolph Ziggler. Charlie Caruso talks to a doctor backstage who says Rey Mysterio may not lose his eye, depending on the severity of the damage. Next up is the WWE Championship match as Drew McIntyre takes on Dolph Ziggler. Dolph reveals his stipulation, an Extreme Rules match, but the rules only apply for Ziggler. Furthermore, if Drew gets disqualified or counted out, he loses the title. Drew has to tread lightly, such as when he nearly suplexed Dolph Ziggler through a table, a clear disqualification that would cost him the title. Ziggler pulls out everything in his arsenal, including the zigzag, the sleeper, a small arsenal of weaponry, and even a rock bottom, but he can't get the Duke. Frustration grows, but Ziggler gets to tune up the band only to eat a Claymore kick and count the lights for the loss. Drew McIntyre retains the WWE Championship. And now it's time for the main event, as it's a Wyatt swamp fight between Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman arrives at the Wyatt compound in a pickup truck where Bray is waiting in a rocking chair. The lights go out and Bray is gone when they come back on. Strowman looks for Wyatt, fighting his way through unknown goons. Probably some leftovers from the Boneyard match. Someone smashes Drew with a shovel at the back, and he looks up to see himself. Strowman wakes up chained to a chair as Wyatt gloats, promising to turn the monster among men back into his weapon. Now, even though Strowman can knock over an ambulance, lift up a 17-ton truck, he can't break the chains and blacks out when he's bitten by a snake. The surreal cinematic showdown continues with more bizarre craziness, including a segment where someone who may be Sister Abigail invites Braun to come home. But the person we thought was Sister Abigail turns out to be Alexa Bliss. Or is she? Or is she Sister Abigail? Or is this just a figment of Bray Wyatt's imagination? She's inviting Braun to come home and they can be together. Wyatt attacks the distracted Strowman and they resume their battle. Ultimately, Strowman throws Wyatt off a pier into water as the Extreme Rules graphic appears. However, Bray reaches out of the water and pulls Strowman under the water until it turns red and the Fiend emerges. Even though there's no 3 count or a referee present, Bray Wyatt seems to be the victor. Yeah, that was one peculiar show. But let's look at the good, the bad, and the downright horrifying of Extreme Rules. As always, we start off with the good as number 1, everything you want to see in a pre-show match. Buddy Murphy is an extremely underrated talent, but for whatever reason, his purpose is to serve as Seth Rollins' job guy, taking the fall whenever the Monday Night Messiah's team needs to count the lights. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean he doesn't put on entertaining bouts as seen in tonight's opener. It's unfortunate Kevin Owens is stuck in the pre-show match, but based on the rumors flying around, he'll be back soon in the main event, likely renewing his feud against Seth Rollins. Number 2, recognizing 2 talented technicians. CESARO and Shinsuke Nakamura's Smackdown Tag Team Championship win was long overdue, as both men are not only talented technicians, but a team that complements each other. It's unlikely we'll be seeing the Swiss Superman or the Artist holding singles gold on SmackDown anytime soon, but putting the tag belts on them is a good way to get them over as more than super talented enhancement talent. The WWE would be wise to keep the belts on Cesaro and Nakamura for several months, but judging from the way the promotion likes adding title reigns to the New Day, don't count on it. Number 3, Sasha shines. Sasha Banks' bid for Asuka's Raw Women's Championship made for a show-stealing showdown, save for a stupid finish we'll get onto later. Despite the awkward ending, the in-ring action was the best fans saw all night, that being despite another strong women's match and the tables match. Asuka and Banks deserves match of the night, and if it wasn't for the finish, probably match of the year. Number 4, Bayley steals another win. Bayley has become the 21st century version of the dirtiest player in the game, relying on her undeniable in-ring talents to win matches, but relying on her huge playbook of heel tactics as needed. Like that other dirtiest player in the game, need we mention his name? Bayley makes her opponents look like $1 million, with fans thinking that they would have beat her if it wasn't for the underhanded tactics. Who would have thought Bayley would still be SmackDown Women's Championship after winning it all the way back in May of 2019? Number 5, Bayley mocks Rey Mysterio. Bayley has perfected her obnoxious heel persona, but she took things to a new level when she feigned sympathy for Rey Mysterio, who had just lost an eye, only to make fun of him, reminding him he wasn't seeing double, but merely seeing her 2 titles. If Rey had really lost an eye, it may have been in bad taste, but it was hilarious, and a reminder of how far Bayley has come in becoming the women's division's top heel. Number 6, extreme indeed. Well, the WWE did at least live up to its Extreme Rules moniker. We'll leave the horror adjective up to you to decide, with some brutal spots including some of the hardest hitting table spots we've seen in some time. The WWE women didn't hold back either, and while we didn't see them going through any tables, they didn't hold back, once again showing they're just as talented as their male counterparts. Number 7. The horror of Smackdown karaoke. The WWE showed a rare moment where they made fun of themselves, with Bray Wyatt sharing some horrific footage, the recent Smackdown karaoke segment that reviled a majority of the WWE universe. Not only was it funny to see Wyatt mock the segment, there's hope the WWE may still have a sense of humor, and a clever stipulation. Dolph Ziggler's brains over Braun approach to defeating Drew McIntyre created the illusion he might upset the WWE Champion. While Ziggler lost, it was an entertaining match thanks to good work from both men and a stipulation that played into Ziggler's heel side. But that was the good. What about the bad? Is number 1, no US title match. What happened to Apollo Crews? While the WWE wrote him out by saying he's still feeling the after effects of Bobby Lashley beating him down, the WWE should have put a replacement match on rather than advertising it and pulling it. Number 2, an awful finish. As good as Asuka vs Banks was, the finish was terrible, confusing fans and reminding veteran fans of the dying days of WCW and making them wonder if Vince Russo booked the finish. The worst part of this was that Asuka vs Banks stole the show, up until the finish. Number 3. Finish? Where's the finish? Speaking of bad finishes, what happened to the finishes for the US Championship match, if you can call that, and the Raw Women's Championship match? While we understand a controversial finish that leaves fans wondering who won is a good way to get them to tune into Raw, there was no need to do it with 2 matches, let alone the title matches. Are they that desperate to boost Raw's rating that it leaves the fans who tuned into the pay-per-view hanging? Apparently yes. And number 4, is the cinematic match dead? And watching the Bray Wyatt vs Braun Strowman swamp fight, fans had to wonder if the cinematic match has worn out its welcome. Although this wasn't an awful cinematic match by no means, it had too much dialogue between Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman, and quite frankly, we don't want to see lengthy dialogue in their main events. We want lots of action. The match was predictable for the most part, except for the segment where Sister Abigail showed up, and it was an apparent illusion of Alexa Bliss, harkening back to the teased romance storyline between Strowman and Bliss from last year. Who would have thought they would have brought that up ever again? The WWE can't let the cinematic matches get overused or misused, or the fans will tire of them. But that was the good, the bad. What about the downright horrifying? How the WWE really hit an all-time low with its eye for an eye match. Not only because it reminded fans of Vince McMahon's hypocrisy when he called AEW a blood and guts promotion, but simply because it was a ridiculous stipulation that is destined to become one of the biggest examples of wrestle crap. While they do deserve credit for not going with a non-finish, the idea of a sanctioned match where your goal is to take your opponent's eye out destroys any suspension of disbelief when it comes to wrestling being a legitimate athletic event, albeit one with some unusual characters and rules. Add in the post-match segment that Rey's eye might be saved, and you had a match stipulation that belongs in a backyard promotion, not a billion-dollar publicly traded company. But despite the awful eye for an eye stipulation, Extreme Rules found some of the best action fans have seen in a long time. The show would be considered a complete success if it wasn't for the non-finishes and the ridiculous eye for an eye bout. Still, the tables match and the 2 women's matches are definitely worth your time. But there you have it guys, our recap and analysis for the 2020 Extreme Rules pay-per-view. What did you guys think of the show? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.